All right, guys, Mighty Joe Morin here of the Turnbuckle Talk podcast, but I am not here to talk about professional wrestling today for a change, and I am not surrounded by my usual co-hosts or whatnot. I am actually joined by Mr. Stevie Richards from over in the Hami Media Group. Welcome to HTM Tech, sir.
Thank God we don't have to talk about wrestling. I am burned out. I am done, and I love to forget about it until I have to watch it on Monday. So thank you.
It's a nice little break from the usual for sure. Now, before we get into talking about all the specifics with these new Macs and everything, one really cool thing that they did at the end of this announcement, Stevie, is they brought back an old thing that the old PC guy versus Mac guy commercials. So before we get into the discussion, I'm going to play a little clip here for everybody.
Stop. Hang on. Wait. One more thing. Hi. I'm a PC. Is there time for questions? Good, because I have one. Why? Why make all these advancements? What's the point? Right? Oh, you're so quiet now. Look, I'm a machine. I'm proud of it. That's my fan. Longer battery life. Plug it in. Where are you going? Just plug it in. Fast. I'm fast. I'm still fast. Check it out. Still got it. PC. Still got it. I've always been there. I always will be. Fast. Okay. My battery's drained. I gotta go plug in. Good luck. Woo! Outlet!
So they brought back John Hodgman from the Mac guy versus PC guy. As I have a feeling that is something that they're going to make a norm again, which I thought was a pretty cool little touch at the end of the presentation there.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good callback, as Ben would call it. It's funny because they just got people to really sort of forget about the one more thing mantra.
Mm-hmm.
And they're bringing it back because that's a hell of a thing that you need to always have one more thing. And now they kind of back themselves right back into that corner now every time they have an event. Yep.
But in the case of this event, Stevie, we didn't have one more thing. We actually had three more things here, which was interesting. They decided to go with the MacBook Air, the MacBook Pro, the 13-inch MacBook Pro, and the Mac Mini, which I think nobody saw coming. And so before we kind of get into the details here, man, what do you think about choosing these particular products and this move away from the Intel processors?
I was a little shocked because I thought the MacBook Air would have been the end of the presentation. Mm-hmm. So the fact they didn't string out and go MacBook Pro Mac Mini in 2021 in two separate events or try to do that kind of stuff. The fact that they threw everything out there, get two different impressions. The first one is on the positive side, obviously now you have a choice. Now what that choice is, because the M1 chip and what it's offering, especially on the two laptops, looks identical. So what am I getting for the extra $400? $999 to $1,299, so $300.
Yep.
CTE kicks in, so my math gets all screwed up. On the negative side, let's remind everybody, have you ever bought a Rev A device from Apple?
Typically, I kind of stay away from the first gen stuff just to see how things kind of work out. But yeah, what's interesting is that they're still kind of offering that Intel option. So they're kind of playing to both sides. You know, that there's this if you're excited, and if you're a little bit scared, we still got the Intel option there for you. So I like that at least they didn't completely axe it.
Well, I think the Intel thing is might be a legal or contract binding thing with Intel rather than trying to have a soft kind of thing because they have Rosetta. So they everything translates already. I think this is mainly to please Intel and fulfill their contract. But the negative end of it, I want to be more specific about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just much like you. Like when I see something that might benefit me and I'm like, oh, that's great. It's going to have every feature of my iPad Pro, but I'm going to be able to run Final Cut Pro. I'm going to be able to do Ecamm Live, StreamYard, all these different things. It's literally a Mac operating system that also runs iOS apps. You know, so I look at that and I'm like, that's tempting, but 3 different products means 3 times more early adopters, 3 times more unofficial, non-paid. As a matter of fact, you're paying Apple to be a beta tester.
Yep.
That's the way I look at it.
It's an accurate statement, especially with the new operating system, which I believe some people can actually get today if they want with Big Sur. We're moving away from OS 10. I believe Big Sur is actually 11. It's going to be the first in that line, and it's bridging that gap between what's now Mac OS and what's iOS. So we're getting closer and closer to things being unified because now we can run iPad and iPhone apps on these things.
Yeah, something like that. See, this is the thing with we still don't have a touchscreen. So that's something that I think will never come to the Mac because you'll cannibalize the iPad Pro. Now on my YouTube channel, and I may pick it up again, especially now, I had a playlist, iPad Pro as a laptop replacement because it fascinated me. You know why? And this may be right now, what you have now is more like an iPad, and I can live with that. But soldered on SSD, soldered on RAM, my laptop experience in the past has always been MacBook Pro means you could get a data doubler, you can take out the DVD drive, you can do all these different things to configure it to be a pro device. Also thermals, which they may solve with this, who knows? But I still, there's a certain, dare I say it, it's kind of like what I talk about with Fire Pro Wrestling. There's a certain heart to using the iPad. There's a certain amount of ingenuity within myself to do something. You know, and for me, it's something as simple as with the iPad, I do cardio almost every day on my spin bike, and I put the iPad Pro up there. I can't do that with a laptop.
No.
I can buy the Magic Keyboard, which is overpriced, but
it is.
I used it and it was pretty damn cool, Joe. So
yeah,
you get the functionality. I just look at this type of thing and it makes me almost want to try the iPad Pro even more to see what I can squeeze out of it.
Well, it's so ultra portable and it's so powerful and so capable that you know, I totally get it. I mean, even in not being able to customize. Right now, I'm on a late, I believe either a late or mid 2017 iMac, and I love the thing. It's great. It's fantastic. It does everything that I need it to do and does it very capably. But I'm locked in. I can't get into this thing, Stevie. I can't upgrade. I can't even do anything with the RAM on this particular unit. So,
21 inch.
I have. It's a 21 inch, and it's one that it's completely sealed up. And again, I love the thing, but I'm stuck with what I got.
Well, that's why for me, and you probably listened to Ben and myself for how many was I stuck on a 2014 27-inch iMac because I did upgrade the memory. It was user upgradable to 32.
Yep.
But the port situation was just killing me. And also I had a hard drive in there instead of an SSD. Yeah. You have a 5,400 RPM. You have a laptop drive from the old days in that 21 inch. So I finally broke down. There was a sale. I got a 27-inch i9. I put 64 gigs of memory in it. If I, third party, obviously. I got a 1 terabyte SSD. I got my 2 Thunderbolt 3s, and I also got a CalDigit Thunderbolt Plus dock. And this thing is good till the Apple comes with the Apple cops and takes it from me.
Well, and we'll discuss the port kind of situation a little bit too, because I mean, with us being content creators, I mean, we hook up things to these devices, right? And I'm sure you're in the same boat as me. My ports are completely filled at the back, right? I've got an external backup 5 terabyte hard drive backing up all our content. I got my mixer. I got the better webcam because the webcam is integrated on these iMacs, and so the ports are filled up. But we're getting into these new devices because that's definitely been an issue for a while, and it's going to be an issue with these particular devices. One thing that I'm going to pull up the graphic here, and as I want to start talking about this M1 chip a little bit here, and I'm going to pull up this graphic just to kind of illustrate the point. We're talking 16 billion transistors on this tiny little chip. It's the whole system is on this little chip. 16. That number kind of blew me away.
This is the gigahertz wars again. See, Apple never used to give specs.
Yep.
I don't know how I feel about this. I understand, and this is Skynet level technology.
It really is.
But I really look at the optimization of the software more than anything. And iOS with the iPad Pro and the way you can just the user interface and how quick things happen. Now, when they compared it to an iPad Pro, talking about the M1, talking about the cores as far as CPU and GPU, I'm looking at that going, wow, my iPad Pro sometimes is faster than my iMac. My iPad
Yeah.
Pro is definitely faster than a MacBook Pro in a lot of sense. Could be. Oh, dude, I'm tempted. When they had to order and you get it next week, I need a laptop to be able to stream shows from the home gym. This
Yep.
iMac is just too much of a pain in the ass. So I was like, that's a possibility. But
And even in the planning of talking about all this kind of stuff, I was talking to our friend Mr. Michael Jargo, who's also an Apple guy as well, and he was kind of on the fence. I was talking about this stuff, and then he actually, I think he was at work at the time, and he actually watched part of the presentation, and it's like 3-4 o'clock in the mornings. I work a night shift at my day job, quote unquote, and he sends me a message. He's like, I saw this Mac Mini. He's like, I think I might have to buy this thing. Right. And but as caution, I was like, dude, there's only like 2 USB ports on this thing. Well, there's a couple of the regular USB-A, the standard ones that we think of, but only 2 of these USB-C ones. So as powerful as these devices are for people like us who are content creators and we're hooking up external things to these machines, it's a painful process right now because we're kind of in dongle hell, or otherwise we have to kind of work around this kind of stuff. It's a bit of a pain with these things, as cool as they are.
it is. I would say that this Cal Digit that I've researched for probably a good year, the Thunderbolt Plus, gives me like 4 or 5 USB A's, gives me, I think, another Thunderbolt or 2 Thunderbolts, gives me audio, gives me USB C, gives me a lot of different stuff to use on this. And I also have a USB C dock for my iPad Pro that I can plug into the back of the iMac. I can essentially I have 2 SD card slots.
Yep.
iMac Cal Digit is UHS 2. Then I also have a UHS 2 in my USB one for the iPad Pro. So I can essentially just throw all 3 of my camera angles for, say, a workout video and bring them all in at the same time to the SSD, which I actually have an external SSD as a scratch drive. They're Thunderbolt 3, by the way. They're not USB-C. For people that are wondering, all these devices, that Mac Mini is Thunderbolt 3. So once you hook up a Cal Digit, you do have the iMac ports.
Right.
Now, what we need to interpret, Joe, see, we're from the old school, I'm sure. When you're talking about RAM, what do we think? Sticks.
Yep.
We're thinking of the soldered RAM.
Yep.
Now, this RAM is more like what the iPad RAM, which has 6 gigs, and it flies. So we're talking about an 8 or 16, which is, if you're talking about the iPad to iPad ratio of RAM speed, I don't know, man. That's pretty damn fast.
And I'm going to throw up another graph. We'll get into kind of some more numbers and some details here. I'm going to throw this one up, and they are claiming, and this is I believe that they're talking about all 3. We're talking the Mac Mini, the MacBook Pro, and the MacBook Air, claiming to be 5 times faster than the top-selling PC desktop. I don't have the other graphic, but they're also claiming to be quicker and higher performing. 98% of the other PC computers out there. That is a bold claim to make.
It's hard though, because you're talking about our top selling PC desktop. That's definitely probably not a custom build.
No,
that's not a Ryzen Threadripper.
No.
Who knows? I mean, are you talking about the top Intel one?
It's all in the wording, right? It's all in how things are kind of worded.
What's the top selling PC desktop? Probably a $500 Dell.
True, right? So it's a fair point. And let me. So we were talking about the actual chip itself here. I'm going to throw up this other graphic here, and essentially this is everything that's on this little M1 chip. We're talking the actual CPU, the GPU, the cache, the RAM, this neural engine, the security chip. This is all crammed into this little 5 nanometer chip with 16 billion transistors. Again, I posted that graphic up. It's a little mind blowing. And what's interesting with this is RAM wise. I mean, you can make an argument. It's number wise. It's because we're still kind of, a lot of us are still, like you said, we're in the old school. We're thinking RAM chips. We think we want more RAM to make things faster. But because this is all crammed on this one little chip, it's actually quicker because there's nothing in between. It's all direct communication. Everything gets equal usage of this on all. It's a little mind-boggling still kind of thinking about it and looking at it.
Well, there's 2 different ways to look at that. Now, obviously, convenience, speed, you're going to have tightly integrated. I've tried to build a Hackintosh in the past year or so before I got the iMac. There's something to be said about your time being worth money. And you get up and running with Apple, you get up and running with iOS. Here's my thought, and it's not such a conspiracy theory. If you follow the right to repair movement and these other things, and Joe, you know where I'm going with this.
Absolutely.
They're killing Hackintoshes within the next 2 years. And guess what? The switch over from Intel to this chip is about 2 years. So this is killing Hackintosh. This is going to kill right to repair in a way, because you can't repair what you just described.
No, you can't.
Send it to them. And dare I say it, I don't understand how Apple is so green when every single part of their stuff is soldered and glued on and you just get a replacement.
Interesting that you bring that up, because I actually have a graphic when it comes to this. Because
that bullshit graphic.
It's one thing, you may know which one that I'm talking about here, but I'll pull it up anyway so we can kind of discuss it, because they do claim to be a very green company, and they're correct to a certain extent. Let's look at it. The packaging is 90% more recyclable, zero waste, 100% recycled tin. Apparently, we're still using tin in some of the stuff. The aluminum, I will agree on it, is highly recyclable. It's highly sought after by recyclers. Plastic, they're BFR, PVC, beryllium, mercury free, all that kind of stuff. That's all fine and dandy. But like you had mentioned, Stevie, this is another case of you get what you get. You got to know that kind of go into this, that what you're buying, it's completely sealed up, and it's very powerful, but you're not going to be able to upgrade these machines anymore. Again, mentioned the idea of customizing and kind of doing your own thing on this. Those days are going to go away.
This is very much an appliance. It used to be where refrigerators and other things could be 25, 30 years old, but now you're lucky if you get 5 years out of most of them. This is another thing. And obviously, people have to care. Like I hold on to this not only because I want to upgrade it and do everything with this iMac, but I'm not at that latest and greatest. I'm at what works for me and my workflow.
Yep.
The wording is very unique because it's free of arsenic, but what does it have in it besides arsenic? I just picked that apart as a worker.
Yep.
And I'm looking at this. Why does Greenpeace why aren't they not number one in every Greenpeace rating? They've never been number one as far as I can remember. Am I off on that?
No, you're very, very correct. And, but like with any kind of higher up company, they focus on the positives and steer clear of the negatives. They've always been very, very good at that. But you had mentioned the Greenpeace stuff. Yeah, I can't recall them ever even kind of being in that stratosphere at all.
I just wish that the Apple to marketing is very, very sly. And listen, all computers to some degree, the e-waste is a huge problem. There's a documentary on YouTube where there's a big scam with e-waste too, where places are getting paid by the government or getting paid as contractors, and they're not doing anything. They're just shipping it off to third world countries, and it looks like just a sad, sad state of events where people. So this recycling thing is just like, is it for the stockholders, or do you really care what's going on?
And that has me thinking as well too, because these devices, especially when we start getting down to the iPhones that I actually have an iPhone 11, is these things are very great, very powerful, but these kind of devices, Stevie, they become very disposable. I mean, they're great. We have them for maybe 3, 4, 5 years possibly, and then chuck it and run to the next one.
It's funny, as I get in my advanced stage, Joe, I'm almost 50 years old. I find myself, I really was one of those guys because I used to be a tech reviewer. I would go and buy the unlocked phones when they weren't so readily available from Germany or Europe. And we're talking about Nokia E61s and stuff like that.
Oh, God, wow.
Yeah, way back. The HP 6515 that had the integrated GPS module. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I get all that excitement and all that, but I've reversed course with that. I really have. I mean, I have a Rodecaster Pro, Shure SM7B. I got a DSLRs, but what I'm using with these things is I squeeze every bit out of them. And I'm not lying to you, dude, with everything going on in the world too, and being so hard to disconnect, my wife and I are looking for a place in the mountains, and I would go to a Nokia 3350 or a flip phone if I had the choice, because I do all my work in front of the computer. I have Mac, I have iMessage, I have all this stuff.
Yep.
Chat. when I'm here, I can work, and actually I'd probably be more productive. And then when I'm gone, I'd be recharged and I would be more focused when I come back to my desk. It's a very unique thing I've shifted over the past few years.
You had mentioned those Nokia phones. Some of those had some very, especially for somebody who's into photography, a lot of those mid to late Nokia phones are absolutely fantastic cameras. And then a lot of
I
these
had the Windows Phone one. What was the Windows Phone one? The big yellow one had an amazing camera.
Yeah,
I liked it, and I liked Windows Phone.
it had a ridiculous amount of megapixel. I can't even think of the number, but and maybe this is kind of the Apple mindset of mine and kind of coming up in my head, but that doesn't always necessarily translate to a better picture because it's all more about the actual quality of the lenses and then how, especially now with machine learning, both on the Apple and the Google side, is that we don't necessarily need these really high-end cameras because we're doing so much processing after the fact that anybody can take a good picture now with these devices. And that's been a real kind of game changer with these really small portable things that we all have in our pockets now is we can all take these amazing pictures.
Yeah. And that's something with the iPad Pro too. And you can take pictures with the iPad Pro. Nobody says anything.
Goofy as it looks, right?
Nobody says, it's a big viewfinder. You get older and you see what happens to your eyesight.
Right.
I use an app called Switcher Studio. This is why I'm talking about the iPad Pro as opposed to the Mac. I use that, and we can hook up 9 iOS devices as cameras or screens, and then you essentially the iPad Pro is a TriCaster, and everybody can see it has a clean feed out to a monitor in my gym. So my wife, it almost has a Joe Rogan type feel to it when we try to do those kinds of shows. It's hard to say, man. Going back to the Mac thing, when you're talking about CPU and GPU, I don't know if you're a big video editing fan. I love video editing software and trying to tighten my workflow. DaVinci Resolve is something I've fallen in love with over the past year, especially the free version. It's so easy to use as far as power. The 17th version came out, and I wonder, it has a neural engine, it has all these different things, but it's very graphical and especially GPU intensive. So how's this new Mac with the M1 going to be optimized? It'll be optimized for Final Cut Pro.
Absolutely.
But what's going to happen when a real memory and resource and CPU and GPU hog like DaVinci Resolve gets a hold of it?
And the compatibility with the new OS as well. That's something that I actually plan holding off on. I mean, when we're doing shows like this, whether it be this Turnbuckle Talk, or I'm using a browser-based kind of broadcasting system, so the system doesn't really matter. But some of the stuff on the back end, like I'm recording just solely audio. I used to use GarageBand, but GarageBand was kind of a bit of a system hog, and since I can't upgrade the RAM on the system, it tended to crash a lot. So I'm actually using Audacity in the background, and that's a program that has kind of notoriously not been updated when these new OSs come out. So it's the kind of thing, it's like, do I upgrade to Big Sur and risk that program not even working, and then having the pain in the ass of trying to roll back to the previous OS, which you can't always do? That's an issue that this stuff is becoming more powerful, but yet a lot of the stuff that isn't Apple, we're worried if it's going to be even supported or not. So a lot of us are kind of holding back on this and going, well, no, let's just kind of wait and see what happens for a little bit, and then maybe we'll consider diving in.
Yeah, I don't have any problem holding on to Catalina. It took me forever to upgrade. The only reason I had Catalina was because I bought the iMac and it came pre-installed, and I didn't want to bother with the downgrade from that because they switched the EFI, essentially the firmware. You can't go back.
Yep.
They're playing a very clever game, and that turns me off a lot with Apple, but the devil, why not just go with that? But I'm very interested to see. My hope and prayer is that before I buy one of these, M1 or Apple Silicon Macs, as far as a portable, Final Cut Pro for the iPad has to be around the corner, because you're talking about crossover. If you can do iOS on a Mac, why can't you do a Mac app now on iOS?
There's really no kind of reason to. And I can't remember exactly how long ago, but you actually did a video on your YouTube channel kind of selling the fact that the iPad Pro can be a legitimate computer or laptop kind of replacement. And just kind of give everybody a little bit in on that, because I think it's a very, very, especially in the case of that device, it's a very valid point in the statement to make.
Yeah, I mean, what do most people do? My test with this in the series was, what do really most people do? Everybody likes to be fancy and say, like you said about the camera, oh, I want a really good DSLR because I might have a photography business.
Yep.
You got to be honest with yourself about you really do. You and I are content creators. I run a business. I edit video. I do essentially need to have time is money. So the quicker I can turn it around and put videos up on YouTube with affiliate codes, it all has a domino effect. The iPad Pro presented an interesting thing because obviously I number one, I hated the butterfly keyboard on the laptop.
Yeah.
And I refused to do soldered memory, soldered SSD, Thunderbolt controllers that seem to go bad when you constantly pull the plug out. Like I leave the plugs in on the iMac, so I'm not messing around with it.
Yep.
My testing phase, if you look at the playlist, it was just talking about how I feel like it's laptop replacement. Then it goes from something as minor as pairing a keyboard, Bluetooth keyboard and a mouse, like a K380 and a Magic Mouse too. Then it went to things like video editing. Then it was hooking up the Rodecaster Pro and using Switcher Studio to really create a Joe Rogan type video podcast, streaming and recording. I wanted to go back to it and say, I spent a week using the iPad Pro as my only device, saying that I would have it in portrait mode as I did a show like this, saying that I would edit videos, saying I would check email, that I would do podcasts, I would do all this stuff. So I have to get to that. But for photo editing, for video editing, with photo editing with Affinity Photo and Pixelmator Photo, video editing with LumaFusion outside of multicam, I wish they would add that. Then it's game over. You really can use the iPad Pro for anything. Now the Magic Keyboard, iOS 14, the fact that you have trackpad support, it really does mimic that type of thing. Also, what I've liked is I already knew I was getting soldered on memory, soldered SSD. I knew I was getting, well, guess what? I was getting a better front-facing camera, webcam, than I'm getting on a laptop or an iMac.
Yep. And what's interesting too is, that Magic Keyboard, as cool and kind of overpriced it is, at least it doesn't, there's not like, was it for that Mac Pro is like $300 wheels that you could buy to kind of move it around. But that's something we could possibly get into. But
I buy gym equipment for $300 and it'll last a lot longer than this friggin' wheels on a MacBook Pro or Mac Pro.
Interesting with these iPads though is that we've gone from this first generation to people just saying, it's just a big oversized iPod that you can't make phone calls on, and it's really morphed into something that was just more purely to just kind of consume content, movies and YouTube and that kind of stuff, to where now it's a full on kind of creation device that you can do art on, you can edit video on, you can kind of pretty much do what a typical computer is capable of doing. It's really interesting to see how that's kind of matured over the years, to where when I look at these new Macs, as cool as they are, an iPad is good for most people out there, Stevie.
Yeah, I would always suggest you get the one with the USB port, because you're going to open up a whole new world of bandwidth. And the things I mentioned, like Rodecaster Pro, now you're talking about also adapters you could buy off Amazon for $30, as opposed to the Apple Lightning one. And you're going to have to keep plugging them and unplugging them for the SD card, for the USB 3 and all this different stuff. So yeah, it's a great investment for me, because, and I was fine with a 2018 iPad Pro 12.9 inch, of course, because if you're going to go that way, you're never going to be able to expand. You can't expand SSD size and you can't expand screen size. So why not just go for that? But I actually gave it to my mother-in-law a while ago, and I got the 2020 because they were on a Windows machine too. They were on an Athlon.
Oh, wow.
Well, they still go on the Athlon because it's what they know. But when they do the iPad, they're like, oh my God, this is so fast and easy, and they can't break anything.
No, that's a very
good
point.
File system to break. There's no settings that you can go into Windows or mess around. It's just it's your iPhone on an iPad. So you can pick it up in 5 seconds and know exactly what you're getting. The iPad Pro presents an interesting thing going forward. I wonder if they are going to some degree keep the same chipset, like not kill it or cannibalize it. They're not going to cannibalize it, but are they going to keep the 12Z in this thing forever before they go up to a 14? Like they have this is the M1 is essentially a 14, right?
It's a thing. I think of it like a 14 plus or like a 14 max. Or
You're still talking about. We got a little love going on. He wants her to get off the chair. That's what he's trying to do.
But so yeah, I want to go into a little bit more detail on some of the stuff here. I'm going to pull up the first one that I want to kind of talk about here. This is the Mac Mini. I don't know if you can tell by looking at this, we're not really showing the back of this, but to kind of give you a kind of an overview here, we're looking up to 16 gigabytes of memory. So I'm assuming that that's the maximum that you can order in this thing. Because again, with this, I'm curious though, because with the Mac Mini, you've always kind of been able to upgrade the RAM if possible. So I'm not sure if they've taken that away out of this.
Yeah,
so,
they did. You can't do that. You have to check. So this is very much all the. I hate to cut you off. This is the chip that we saw that had the RAM is in the Mac Mini as well.
Correct. Up to 2 terabytes solid state drive, which that's a decent amount of storage, but typically solid state storage, especially through Apple, is very, very costly. It supports up to the 6K external XDR displays, which are also ridiculously expensive if you go into the store to try and purchase one. Thunderbolt USB 4, like you had mentioned there, up to 60% more energy efficient, which is kind of a vague statement to make because we're not really comparing it against anything. It can do iPhone and iPad apps up to 3 times faster CPU. I'm assuming that they're comparing that up against the previous generation of this device. Secure Enclave, that's a big thing that Apple's been pushing lately, the security aspect of it, given a lot of the antitrust kind of stuff going on. They've been really pushing that in their agenda. Up to 6 times faster graphics compared to the previous device, 16 times faster in the machine learning aspect of things. Ultra compact design, which it's already pretty compact.
No, they didn't change the size at all.
Very quiet. I'm assuming that this has a very quiet fan. HDMI, the newer Wi-Fi 6, which is kind of cool. Gigabit Ethernet is something that's still around. No real upgrades on the hardwire situation there. So, yeah, a cool device. I think it's going to be coming with Big Sur already preloaded on it. This is good for somebody that kind of wants to have something compact on their desk, but wants to have their own monitor and keyboard and mouse and all that kind of stuff. And they kept the price down, which I think is actually kind of a cool thing.
Well, they can keep the price down on that monitor and that stand, which are 2 separate things as well.
That's one thing I want to, before I go to the next one here, I want to pick your brain on the monitor and then charging separately for a stand. I don't think I've ever seen that anywhere else in the industry, Stevie. We're going to charge you for this extra for the stand now. That blew my mind a little bit when I first saw it, because actually on HTM Tech, when we're still doing it as a full-on podcast, we actually did an episode where we went through and we spec'd out a Mac Pro, and it's like you can buy a car for the price of this friggin' thing, right?
It was like 54 grand, I think.
It's ridiculous. Like it's ridiculous. It's cool, and as kind of nerdy as it is, it was cool. But I mean, just price wise, it's ridiculous. And they charge you extra for the stand and the monitor. Like, how many people are buying a monitor and then put it on? Like, it's just.
I was looking at an outbuilding to put my gym in, and with electricity and pouring the concrete and everything, it was 20 grand. So, yeah, your priorities are screwed up if you're buying those wheels.
Oh man.
Let's look at the secure enclave part of this, and let's look at what they term as protecting us from ourselves. Actually, this is killing right to repair. This is killing Hackintosh. That's all this is building more of a walled garden. I'm not saying they're wrong. They can do whatever they want. They're successful. Their stuff works. It just works. But we're not going to make pretend like you're the all-caring company. You're the all-caring trillion-dollar company with suicide nets outside Foxconn. Good job. You really care. And if for anybody that talks about any of this other stuff, by the way, you're probably wearing Nikes. You probably have an iPhone. You have an iMac. You have something else. Everybody's guilty. I'm sorry. We're all guilty.
So I just want to pull up the similar screen here for the
change subject before I really start going off
for the Air and the Pro. So kind of some similar things here. The unified memory architecture, which again, very cool, very powerful, but again, not upgradable whatsoever on this kind of stuff. 3.5 times faster on the CPU, 6.5 or 6 times on the GPU, faster machine learning neural engine, Big Sur, advanced camera ISP, which is kind of interesting. They're using the machine learning to try and beef up the subpar built-in cameras and things, which I believe are still doing 720p, which is kind of lagging behind the rest of the industry. 20 hours of battery life, that's a significant thing. I think that's good for the professional on the go that's not always going to be at home plugged in. And the other interesting thing too with this M1 is it's industry leading performance per watt. So it's using less power, but getting more power out of each one of those watts. Universal apps, again, with the iPad and iPhone apps that it can run as well. So kind of similar deal to the Mac Mini, just on a laptop.
Apple has a trick with that battery life. You know what they usually do and how they set that parameter.
You just have to look at some of the screenshots and you have to peel the back of. And when you look into these things, especially with this MacBook Air, it's like 90% battery in those things. The motherboard is like literally the size of my Apple TV remote. Like the motherboard is ridiculously small. It's all battery in there.
Well, not only that, but they're gauging it by screen brightness at a point where you can't even read text. The trick is they're doing the least amount of the screen takes up a lot of power. So by turning that down, you're going to extend it.
Yep.
Then it's Wi-Fi. So if you have a hotspot, and also if you're doing anything like editing a photo, editing a video, you're not getting 20 hours out of it.
No. And what's interesting too is I've in kind of preparing for this, watching a lot of stuff online and other websites about this. A lot of people complaining that these things don't look any different. That did surprise me that they went that route. And I mean, with these kind of things too, Stevie, I mean, how more different can we make these things look? I mean, you had mentioned we're not going to get a touchscreen laptop from these guys anytime soon. It goes completely against their philosophy. It could potentially cannibalize the iPad Pro and all that kind of stuff. And then I don't know about you. I've owned a Windows laptop that had a touchscreen, and it's not very intuitive, not very useful to try and touch on something that's vertical like that. It gets a little painful after a while when you're trying to touch like this. It just doesn't work. I'm wondering how it's going to translate over to the iMac now, because it's just going to. I don't see myself really kind of getting it, because I mean, I already have one that's already kind of sealed up, and this is going to be even kind of more of the case. It's going to have to be something really, really revolutionary and very different for me to even consider spending probably upwards of $2,000 on a new device, when the one that I have, you'd mentioned, works perfectly fine for what I needed to do.
Yeah, I thought the 2019 iMac, and I still kind of think the 2019 iMac, the 27-inch, it's the last one you'll probably be able to open up to any extent. They're going to be sealed from now on. They might lessen the bezels. When people complain about the chin or all this other thing with the iMac, it's like, really, who cares? You got a 5K screen. It's 27 inches.
Right.
I'd love to have target mode, so when everything dies, I'd love to use it again like you used to, but that's Apple. Apple's going to Apple. So, but I don't get it. If anything, make them thicker.
Yeah,
make the laptops thicker. So see, this is I'm like debunking everything Apple's saying. I'm not an Apple hater.
Go ahead. That's
I'm the biggest Apple user probably, that people know, as far as the products I buy, when I buy them, less often than that I used to. Not buying everything. Like the Magic Keyboard has been a 6-month research thing to really justify. And once I get it, I'll use it all the time.
Yep.
Here's the thing. If this is running like an iPad Pro, if this is going to run so cool and so quiet, why do you have a fan?
Yeah, well, the Air is not going to have one, but the Mac Mini and the Pro are going to have a fan. The Air has actually gone completely fanless, which is I think a little risky given what it is, but
but they should all be fanless in a way, because they all essentially, there's no M1 upgrades. There's no different chips. No. It's not like you're going from an i5 to an i7 or a quad core to an 8-core. This is weird, unless they just took the shells they already had and they realized that the MacBook Air with the fan was a waste of money because it wasn't even connected to a heat sink.
Yeah. Well, what they're doing likely on the Mac Mini and the MacBook Pro is they're up in the clock speed, and they realize, okay, these are starting to run a little hot. We're going to have to put a fan in these. So what they've done with the MacBook Air is they've lowered the clock speed essentially on the same chip is what they're doing.
So they're thermal throttling the MacBook Air like they always have.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
Well, I'm wondering, even with the thermal throttling, what are we talking about here? Will the iPad Pro still be right there in line with these other ones and truly be quiet? Might get a little warm during LumaFusion exports when you're doing, LUTs and all that stuff over it, but nothing to where it kills you.
No.
See, that's what I don't understand. what you're doing is you're saying it's completely new technology. It's completely fast. It's completely cool, completely quiet. But here's an old fan.
Yeah, but it's a very cool fan, and they have to use kind of their buzzwords. It's they're asymmetrical, so that every little fin is different. So we're reducing the
I know
sound.
the fan blades are curved to the
Yeah,
aluminum or whatever the hell fucking Johnny Ive talks about.
aluminium. It's I
Whatever.
kind of missed that term.
I
Actually.
feel like I spend more money just listening to him say that word. I feel like my bank account empties every time.
Briefly on that, one cool thing about that with that and just kind of the Apple philosophy, and I know why that they always got Johnny to do it, because he's got the smooth British voice, which I can't even attempt to recreate. They're so good, Stevie, at making you want things that you don't necessarily need. That's really been the secret to Apple's success, is that they're able to make so many people want these devices that they maybe don't really need. The ones that they have are probably fine, but they create that want and that need.
I don't know if they do it so much anymore. If Johnny Ive became where Tim Cook is, if he succeeded Steve Jobs, I think that magic still would have been there.
Yeah.
Because he can sell and you can see he cares. Tim Cook is a logistics guy. He's a supply chain guy. He has fragmented, like I almost need to take back all the stuff I said about Android and fragmentation, because what are we seeing right now?
Yep.
iPhone 12, Max Pro, douche, whatever. I don't know what I mean, what are you naming it? I mean, it used to be so simple. iPhone.
Yeah.
I mean, Steve Jobs, I know he would have never came out with a 12.9-inch iPad Pro. I think that was a great move. But then again, can you name? Okay, you used to be able to say everything in the Apple lineup. Now I'm trying to remember. It's almost like Android. I'm like, okay, we got a 12.9. I think we got a 10.5. We used to have a 10.5. Now we have 10.2. We had a 9.7. Is it 11 now? Oh, yeah, there's 11. Am I wrong?
Oh no, you're you're absolutely correct. And even on the iPhone side, when you go into the site, I mean, we got I'm gonna try and remember them all. All right, so we still got the iPhone 10R. We've got the iPhone 11. We've got the iPhone 11.
We've got the iPhone 10, S10,
S10,
3 10s,
right? And then 3 10s, and then we've got 3 11s. Now we've got 3 or 4 12s. I mean, we even have an iPhone 12 mini now. It's got to create a little bit of kind of consumer confusion, but I mean, I get it. They want to try and cover their bases and try and cover every price point. But I mean, even on the low end with that iPhone 12 mini, we're still looking at almost $1,000.
I think the only one that really spoke to people really was the iPhone SE, because that's the one I looked at with the old square design, and it had a processor from I think the iPhone 10 something. See,
Correct,
one of the 10, the XYZ or whatever the hell it was. Here's the thing though. Being a businessman that sells resistance band programs,
and
I sell products, and I even have affiliate models. The paradox of choice makes people not make the choice.
Yeah.
If I released a 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 20, 26 week resistance band training programs, you'd be like, oh, I mean, what? The 12 is the beginner. The 16 is when you graduate, or for more advanced people. It's a bit more of a challenge. You don't have 5 days a week. Do the full body workout 3 times a week. You want yoga? We got 1 yoga series.
For sure.
Hey, you need a chair? We got 1 chair workout. That's even a lot to me. I'm afraid to release like a power band program that might be great, might be the most successful, but I'm afraid to confuse people. There's an art to that. Steve Jobs knew it. Tim Cook is just like, what's the stock? How many trillions do we have? How much? Oh, geez, they just sent me another 500 million in stock options. Nice.
You had just actually almost kind of segued into something. I think maybe we'll go for another 15 minutes or so here. But
I only have like 10. I'm not cutting you off or trying to talk you down.
But
I realized I had a call with Switcher Studios, so I'm
no worries. Before we kind of wrap things up here, you had mentioned kind of selling some stuff here. I'm going to take a quick break to hear from our friends over at collarandelbowbrand.com. We'll be right back.
Fall is in the air. That means pumpkin spice lattes. That means pumpkin spice everything. Ugg boots, yoga pants, God, I hope I can fit into mine this season. Scarves. And baseball tees. Hoodie! Not yet, but soon. The metal tee. No need for any cease and desist here. And hats. Stop by collarandelbowbrand.com today and get your fall drop immediately. It's fall, y'all.
collarandelbowbrand.com.
You'll be the coolest person in Starbucks whether you're wearing yoga pants and Ugg boots or not. In fact, I like to go to Starbucks without the bottoms on all the time and just wear my collar and elbow brand type shirts. I immediately get my coffee and go.
All right, I keep wanting to call myself Big Joe, but I've recently changed my name to Mighty Joe, as per Jargo. He's been calling me that on his wrestling podcast, Destino. And so you heard from our friend Allison. I'm still trying to picture him in Starbucks wearing what he had described there, and it's it's hilarious, even just the thought of it. But if you use our promo code JK Podcast at the checkout, you get 10% off your order there. So make sure and check that out. All right, Stevie, let's kind of wrap things up here. And I think just to kind of overall here, what I want to get at to finish things off here is, should the average consumer out there look at these and think that it's something that they need or that they want? For myself, I would say, if you've already got something that's very capable, if you have a newer MacBook Pro, or you have something, 2017-ish later iMac and that kind of stuff, I think that you can kind of hold off for a little while. I think you're safe. Just kind of watch and see how it all kind of unfolds. I think, typically in the technology world, Stevie, being an early adopter, there's usually some issues. So I say, just kind of watch and see what happens. And then maybe in that second or third generation, some people might want to jump ship, because with this chip too, a lot of developers and whatnot, I mean, a lot of the stuff is based off of the Intel stuff, and a lot of what they're doing may not even be supported by this. So I think that people should just kind of tread carefully when it comes to this at this point.
We have to be a little bit patient now, outside of the fact that if you review this stuff and you get Google AdSense checks and you can write it off, or in my case, I could write it off, I guess, for my business, but money to me is just money. We have to see, like, the iPad Pro is like an 18-month refresh cycle.
Yep.
iMacs now are like this will be the last iMac that I have up until the silicone one, probably 2021.
Yep.
We may have an 18-month refresh cycle with these three devices, or it might be 10 months. They've done it before where it's less than a year. They might stock up the chip, or there might be some adjustment they make, or some other clock speed on it, or a new neural engine. And now you're like, oh, I paid $12.99 and now it's worth $400.
Yeah.
It's very tough to say. You have 2 years before they completely switch from Intel to Apple silicone from the chipset.
Yeah, just like when they made the transition before from their own stuff to the Intel, it was about a 2-year process. What I see what happened with the iMacs, I mentioned it briefly before, that XDR kind of display. What I see is them essentially taking that and cramming the Mac into it. It's going to be that kind of form factor. That's how I see them kind of going forward with that line of products. And again, that's going to be something where it's going to be a little painful. It's going to be probably pretty expensive. Hold on to what you got. If it works well for what you're doing and what you have, you're good.
Yeah. For the times we're living in right now, and not knowing if there's going to be a shutdown any day, I think having your $1,000 or $1,200 or even $600 with the Mac Mini, unless you want to start your own online business and you want to make the adjustments necessary for opportunities in this new crazy world that we live in, that's something different. If it's your first Mac, that's also something to where, if it's your first computer or first Mac, iPad Pro plus Magic Keyboard and a monitor.
It's a good choice. And to use a line from your most recent YouTube video, especially these days, it's very, very relevant these days, Stevie. Live within your means. Don't live beyond your means. We're kind of nerding out with some of this kind of stuff. And I love talking and I love observing technology. I always have for like 30 plus years. And it's cool to look at this stuff, but you can't just buy everything that, you set your eyes on. You have to kind of be realistic and live within your means. I love that expression, and now more than ever, boy, does it ever apply.
Yeah, thank you for watching the morning warm up. By the way, I really appreciate it, Joe.
Fantastic.
I appreciate it. Living within your means is just one of the topics to keep me honest. Like as I was doing the morning warm up, right afterwards when I was editing, Walmart had the Xbox Series X. This was 2 days ago, November 10th, and I could have went and picked it up. Like they were open at 6. Like after I edited, I could have drove over.
Yep.
And I was like, how much do I really play my PS4 right now? Outside of the fact that I could play NFL 2K5 on the new Xbox, and I don't have to have the original one anymore, which Adam Rivera was very kind to send to me. What's the price to performance ratio, and how does it affect my business? I love playing video games, so don't get me wrong. I love enjoying life, but $500, my God, okay. I mean, I could probably get a Magic Keyboard for $329 if I really needed something with the money, or how can that $500 turn into $750 or $1,000, or just stay $500 if my wife or someone I love or care about needs it more than I do right now?
For sure.
That's the real test.
Yeah. I mean, my gaming platform's the Nintendo Switch. I can take that kind of wherever I go. I've kind of over the years kind of simplified and doubled down kind of on the gaming, and like you, I mean, PS5 and Xbox Series X, cool. But I mean, I could have this platform with all these bunch of games and never have the time to play them. So I mean, you can't just have something like that just for the kind of sake of having it. You know, buy something you're really going to get some use out for, and especially then if you can turn around and make a profit off of something like that, you know, that's definitely a wiser purchase as opposed to just like a $700-800 device that just sits there collecting dust.
And for anybody wanting to get the iPad Pro, guess what you can do? Pair a PS4 controller, play Call of Duty on a 120 hertz refresh rate without having to pay $500 for you can play video games on the iPad Pro, and you can be very, very happy with it.
Very literal game changer. All right, man. Well, I think we'll kind of wrap things up here, but before we go, because people kind of on my platform are probably seeing you for the first time, so let everybody know kind of what you're up to these days and where they can find you.
Sure. Well, mostly everything I'm doing on the regular is the morning warm up, 6 a.m. Eastern time on my YouTube channel. Just search Stevie Richards. It'll come up. If you're watching it on demand, there's something going on YouTube where live streams aren't really coming up as fast. Go to the main page, look at the morning warm up playlist. The newest episode will be there. Also, it's available on all audio platforms. Anything you can think of. You can go to anchor.fm/Stevie Richards. Look that up. If you want to start your own podcast, it's free. That's what I use. Pretty cool stuff. Also, I've obviously Stevie Richards Fitness for all your home fitness needs. And I just got the Monster G3 assembled before we started recording. That's why I had to rinse off and clean and then find Odin. But Stevie5, ForceUSA.com, more people than ever are buying home gyms and not counting on Planet Fitness being open for much longer or any other gym. And use the code Stevie5 and you end up saving a bit of money and also supporting all the content that I create.
And of course, for myself, you can find me at TB Talk Pod on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Carl and I do Turnbuckle Talk every Monday, and then we put out the audio version on Tuesdays. And of course, I appear quite often on the Destino Pro Wrestling Podcast with Michael Jargo, and I do appear now on the Hitting the Marks. No pro wrestling podcast, just a Hitting the Marks podcast. I'll probably end up being a regular on there. Fantastic to have those guys back. Having Rick and Jargo together. The microphone has been absolutely fantastic. I love having those guys. I download that and I listen to them at work. And yep. And then with HTM Tech, you know what? I might end up kind of doing this stuff more often. I love talking about technology, especially if it takes me away from pro wrestling a little bit. I'm kind of all for that, for kind of a change of pace. So who knows? We might end up making this a bit of a regular deal.
Yeah, I think it'd be great to show people, especially freeways. Like I mentioned, DaVinci Resolve. There's lots of free apps out there that you can create some. I created my Rocky style YouTube opening when I put it up there. That was on the free version of Resolve. It took me about 5 minutes.
Very, very cool.
Pretty cool, yeah. I'm not smart at all, so you can do it if I can do it.
If Stevie can do it, anybody can do it. All right, man. I think that's a good way to wrap things up, and we'll see you guys on the next one.